Hello, welcome everyone. So glad that you're here with us. Sorry for the late start. All right. So this is our 22nd career event. And if you've just joining us, you've actually missed quite a number of career day events. And this one, of course, is going to be as informative as all our other career day events. And for last week, our career day event was actually around animation. So if it is that you have any creative skill as it relates to drawing, creating characters and bringing them to life, whatever your imagination is, whether it's, is something more along the lines of animals, doing your creative stuff like Tom and Jerry, or more along the lines of Dragon Ball Z, essentially last week, the last career day event would have been a very good event for you to have a look at. Now, these are essentially our objectives, right? So we do see where there's a need for us to build and market our skills. So there are many of us that have varying skills, whether it is skills to create animation, as we've said before, or whether it is skills along the lines of artificial intelligence, or whether it is web development. Each of us have skills, and we are now giving you guys the opportunity to build and market your skills, because essentially having your skills and just you alone only knowing about it, or it's only local to your inner circle, that alone won't be enough for you to make a big impact on the world and a big impact on Jamaica. So here's an opportunity to market your skills and build them. And our web developer that will be presenting today, he's actually a global web developer. So we're hoping that some of those skills that he has gathered, he'll be able to share with you guys, and you'll be able to take your web development to the next level. Of course, we also give an opportunity to learn and share the knowledge. So as each of us grow, in each of us build the different skills that we have, there's an opportunity now for us to learn and share the knowledge among each other as we continue to make better code, make a better impact, revolutionize the Caribbean, move the Caribbean from more of a consumer of technology to a producer of technology. And there is a problem, we are all computer scientists. There is a problem that we want to face, that we want to solve as the community. We recognize that companies are not able to find developers, whether it be software developers, web developers, and joining this community gives you the opportunity to become a part of our network, where it is that we allow companies to interact with you guys. The speaker today is actually from Ad Intelligent. I know I'm jumping into a little bit of his bio, but he's from Ad Intelligent. So we actually allow companies to be able to find developers. And we do recognize that there is sometimes a shortage of developers as it relates to companies being able to find them. From or interaction and or networking would have recognized that there or animation industry, we do have a shortage, and we do have companies trying to find skills within the Caribbean to bring about a more inclusive atmosphere, a more inclusive set of designs. Because as you would have recognized, there's a lot of movement away from the traditional animation. You see now popular animations using persons from Hawaii, a different ethnic group. We also see where there's no diversity, where there are also including, having a Little Mermaid being a Black actress. And of course, CGI is very much involved in many of the movies that are now created. So we definitely want to have companies be able to find us. Now, for today's agenda, we'll be going into web development. Unfortunately, our speaker is running a bit behind time, so we're going to be doing a little intro into web development, and then I'll be introducing our speaker, after which he'll be doing the presentation, and we'll be having discussion where it is that you can ask him some questions around how it is that he's able to do some of the things that he's done, and just networking and sharing in the knowledge. And of course, then we'll wrap up. All right. So for our intro to web development, we're actually going to be opening the floor for you guys to have an interactive session as we prepare for the main speaker to join. All right. And of course, you'll be able to see in our chat how it is that you can follow us and get more information on our upcoming events. And of course, you'll be able to also see our past events that we've had, if it is that you want to catch up on some of the career days that we've had, or crash course sessions, etc. All right. Okay, so here we are, web development. So the reality is web development is a very interesting field. Can we have a raise of hand for all the persons who are doing web development currently on the session, whether it is your main job or a hobby? So, okay. So far we have 2 persons. So, all right. Andor. Oh, okay. 3. So Taji, Andor, Charma. Okay. Very interesting name. All right. So, what are some of the limitations that you guys have as it relates to web development? Can your client do you have to have a client that is within the same geographical location? I'm gonna pick on Andor. Do you have any clients that is are all your clients within the same geographical location?
Yeah, hi everybody. Nice to meet you. So
Nice to meet
I
you.
moved. I actually moved to Kingston 2 years ago. So I have a bit of a diverse background, and why I joined this whole core, because in my whole life I was into web development and need to love teaching and helping others. So I thought it would be nice to meet all other like-minded developers into web. So yeah, my clients are mainly in the UK and in the US, because that's where I am from.
Okay, nice. Let's hope that you'll be able to also add to your catalog some clients in Jamaica as well. All right. Thank you very much,
Oh,
Andor.
thanks.
Right. And we have, let us see, we have from Charma. I just do web development as a hobby at the moment, working on some small projects to get experience. Good, good, good. Yeah. So that's actually one of the great benefits of web development. It's that we're not limited to geographic location, and the speaker is actually he's based in Jamaica, but he has done web development as far as Rome, um, you know, even out extending outside of the Caribbean and within the Caribbean for entities in Barbados. And so we do see that it is possible to do excellent work. And if it is that you're doing excellent work, your work will speak for itself, right? You're as long as it is that you're securing your website as best as possible, you're following the best practices and so on. All right. Now, what about in terms of language? What is the main language that we are now using? I'm gonna call on Shane. He would have been one of the persons who would have indicated that he's currently in the web development industry.
Well, some people will say I'm a man of many languages. So right now I'm mostly in Python and PHP. Mainly Laravel. I always tell people Laravel is not PHP, just looks like PHP. It's one of those industrial standards common to web development when has a lot of structure, a lot of features and best practices implemented in it. Been a web dev for quite some number of years now, probably over a decade, and it's one of the best frameworks I've seen to use for web development projects.
Okay. Thank you very much, Osheen. What about you, Jason, in terms of languages?
I think we can all agree that JavaScript is the greatest language ever created and on this planet, so there's no debate necessary.
Yes, sir.
Did someone cough just now?
Yeah. I see also we have in the comment persons talking about React.
React and Express.js, most definitely.
So not Laravel.
No. Well, React and Express is front end. Um, um, so JavaScript is front end as well, but of course you also have Node.js, which is pretty much JavaScript on the server side. Um, but yeah. Front end probably React is the best front end language. To well, it's more of a framework, but yeah.
Okay. So
Well,
and that's
React is the best.
and that actually segs into our next the next segment of our discussion, and is that the web development is actually as inclusive and as far reaching as possible, where it's not limited to one particular framework, not limited to one particular language, but essentially whichever that you are most comfortable with, you can build your different application, your different web development programs, website, etc. In those various languages, various frameworks, and you'd be able to integrate most of the different functionalities across various platforms, across various systems. All right. So we do see that there's a lot of benefits to doing web development and, even just exploring it as a hobby. But one of the key thing that you would have to recognize is that Practice is, of course, important, and creating your catalog of work that you've done would definitely be a plus as it relates to marketing your different skills and reaching out to greater heights and greater levels as the technology continue to progress. Because the reality is JavaScript is not 10 years old yet. Am I correct?
You're incorrect.
I'm incorrect? Oh no, JavaScript is over 10 years old?
Yes.
Oh no, I've been behind time, man. I've been behind time. Is React over 10 years old?
No, not as yet. So JavaScript, JavaScript was around 1995. I mean, I think you made a mistake and said JavaScript instead of React. So yeah, JavaScript was from the 90s. React is pretty much in the 2010 area above. Um, but before React and many fancy framework, there was the old good and famous jQuery. I also want to kind of put this question forward. Like, does everyone know the difference between, like, in web development, there's like three different main category: web design, web application development, and of course you have cross-platform application development. So when come on to web development, does everyone know what the difference between web design and well, when I say web design and web application development, or just web page development? Like, give a short answer of people who know the difference between those. Or a matter of fact, anyone who can answer it, that would even be a plus. But what's the difference? Any takers? Okay, I'm going to choose. So I'm more of an alphabetical type of guy. Andor, can you give like a good differentiation between web page development and web app development, if you don't mind?
Oh yeah, you mean me?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for the question. Yes, absolutely. And it's very important to differentiate. It's a really good idea, I think, to approach the whole field to bring this clarity at the beginning. So originally, when web started, there was no web apps. It was more web design and web development, and the web development split to front end and back end. And web application is, I think, a newest after HTML5 and the new versions of JavaScript with object-oriented coding. It's really allowed to create proper softwares like Google Docs or any of the social media platforms. And many times, even me, for my clients, instead of creating a native mobile app, we're actually using web technologies to create web apps and package it as a mobile app, or we even using it for augmented reality, to use the WebXR and WebGL standards. So that's all the app development. And how you has the design that mostly, at least at my company and in my kind of professional relationships, web designers usually don't know much about coding, right? Maybe a bit of HTML and CSS, but definitely not JavaScript.
Yeah.
So they're creating this prototype. Sometimes some get it in Photoshop, sometimes Illustrator, sometimes they use this dedicated platform like InDesign, and we, the developers, have to turn these designs into code.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that answer. That was actually an excellent answer. So you touch on web design, and both web application, and I want to also point out. So, for example, there are WordPress developers as well as web page developers and so forth. Of course, you can take a web design, the general process of when it comes on to developing a website. Of course, you do your requirement gathering, understanding what you're building and so forth. Then you may do a prototyping, wireframe, or whatever to come up with the look, the feel, and the general design and experience of a web page or a web application or so forth. And then you go into, the development process. All right. So the real thing that I wanted to point out, which Andrew pointed out. So there in with you have web design, and from web design you may go into web application as well as just plain web site development. So a plain website development, someone might code a bit of JavaScript, HTML, and so forth. But that's just it. So if you look at, for example, most WordPress site or simple business page, it just informative information or a simple blog and so forth. So that's one side of web development. And of course, with web application, it's more you're doing transactional, not transaction in terms of money, but there's some form of business processing that is happening on the back end, doing some form of calculation or logic to produce dynamic data or dynamic functionality based on what the user does. So that's generally one of the main principal difference between a simple website and web application. And Andrew pointed out some of them already. So I saw someone mention in the comment that web app as a server, web page doesn't that's not necessarily true. Firstly, every single thing that is we're able to visit on the web is pretty much it's hosted somewhere. It's hosted somewhere on a server, a machine, or so forth. And a server is simple computing engine or a simple computer that is hosting a file or serving a set of file or web application to the general public. Of course, it could be internal or it could be the external or what the better word to say is intranet or extranet, and pretty much the World Wide Web is a global extranet. So there's always a server that web pages, web application, or whatever is serving on. And of course, there is a big fallacy when it comes on to serverless. Serverless doesn't mean that it's not hosted on a server. It's just that you're unaware of where the server is. So it's pretty much it's used for scaling, cloud hosting, and so forth. But let me not get into too much of that technicality. So yeah, just wanted to point out that web application and web design and websites as because I think a lot of time when people jump into web development, they don't realize that they might end up building like functional applications that actually does something. So with that said, my next question is to like any of you want to share what's your general process of even though I indicate some of it earlier, but like what's your technique of general going in, understanding a project, and then developing a web application or website to suit like whatever need of the client, of yourself, or so forth. Anyone want to give like share your thoughts on that? Okay. All right. Going to pick random pick someone. Kayan, any thoughts on that? Like a general process of like building websites and applications.
Um, mm, yeah. So I guess for the professional side, the interface with the client, getting idea of what they want, and making suggestions to them as well about changes. Um, for me personally, I, I usually it's like I don't I usually like try to find projects that affect me personally and build something on that. So for my projects, I had to like send some invoices for my employer. So like send some invoices to my employer. So I did something to that and made a web interface for it. Yeah.
No, that's cool. That's cool. So that's quite interesting. One of one of the thing that I realized when come on to a lot of developers, they work on projects, or should I say, they perform better on projects that they really care about, meaning there's an impact that they see or value that they see. So they tend to put in more time into learning the domain and understanding what they're truly developing to make an impact, not just for the client and their customers, but also for themselves. So I actually find that quite interesting. I think it's an approach that a lot of people should take, but sadly, not every time you can get a job that aligns with your passion or something that you truly care about. Um, in terms of languages, everyone has a go-to language, but how do you then go about picking if that's the actual language you should use or framework you should use? Um, and instead of just learning something new that could be like a better fit for that project. Yes, we're buying time for the presenter to come, even though it don't seem like um the presenter is on his way. So Alvin, can you check in with the presenter? But yeah, back to the question. Anyone want to, take a stab at that? Or again, I can also randomly choose someone. Any takers? Okay, randomly choose someone. All right. I'm going to go with Taji. Um, eh, Taji. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. Okay, I'm not background count to noisy or LL. All right. Cool. All right. So I'll pick someone else. Kevon, any thoughts on the question? How do you choose which framework or language to use? And of course, you can unmute and answer.
Good night. Am I being heard?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, so I'm not actually, I don't work as a developer or anything, but I am knowledgeable about it. So when I am choosing to build a project, the framework or the language, in choosing a framework or language, it would be important to know what exactly you're building because there are different languages that exist, so many different languages that exist, and if you're going to build something, it's important to know what you're building so that the language you use actually aligns with that project. For example, if the website or the web app that you're building is time sensitive, you wouldn't want to use a framework or a language that compiles slower or that works slower. It would be important to use one that's way faster. For example, I'm not really familiar with the speeds of the languages right now. However, I know that Python is not as fast as like C++, for example. So if you're developing a time-sensitive app, it would be important to use C++ in that case. Framework-wise, in terms of the UI, I think it would be important to choose a more UI-friendly language. Say, for example, React or Vue. But it all depends on what exactly you're building and what the client or what the user desires. Because at the end of the day, you're building it for them. It's what they want to see. So I think that's my metric for choosing a language.
Okay, that's actually a good answer. To add on that, the speaker is here, so I'm going to make it short. So some addition to that is, when you're choosing a framework language, you also should think about like the domain. So like when come on to like application that crunch a lot of data and a lot of numbers, it's actually better to use like Python-based language frameworks and so forth. When you also need to think about the developer community. You can have the best language, best framework, but if there's not a lot of developers or community support for it, it might not be the best fit for the project because you want it to be sustainable and maintainable where you can get new people and to contribute and prolong the project. There's other means in terms of what does the language already support, what does the framework support. So of course it will have certain features ready-made for you to just use, implement, import the library whatsoever instead of you building over everything from scratch when there are people who probably build these stuff already. There's also, as you said, performance wise, there's also the whole ease of use and readability of code, not to mention how structure you can make a particular framework or project is. So yeah, that's some stuff that I'm going to add to it. The other thing that I wanted to ask is how much of us actually do testing for our web application, but I'm going to leave that question for the end of the after the presentation. So with that said, Christopher, you can take the wheel. Either we can introduce Christopher. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shane. You clearly have a wealth of knowledge that you want to share. Just eager to share. Thank you so much. All right. So, Christopher Durrell is an award-winning software developer who, in his role, manages UX, architecture, and development to create practical and aesthetic websites. These websites have spanned across multiple industries, including banking, hotels, and engineering, from Barbados to Rome, while being cognizant of the different global players. He has over 9 years of experience in software development and holds a Bachelor's of Science honors in computer science and economics from the University of the West Indies, Mona, right? And apart from all of that development and all of that creativity, he co-leads Youth Can Do It, which is a social activity where they teach young people from age 7 to 25, things around computing. So he's very, very much involved in the computing space. All right. Christopher?
No, thank you, Eldon, for that intro, and Shane.
No problem.
Okay, first of all, guys, I'm glad to see you online. I'm hoping to have a nice discussion with you all today about careers in web. Now, we've been doing this Zoom thing for at least 4 years now, right? So let me just make sure. Can you hear me?
Hearing you loud and clear.
Excellent. And then the next question is, can you see my screen?
All right, so I'm gonna ask you to share. I don't believe you're sharing just yet. Seeing it now. Well, I'm seeing it now.
Okay, cool. And then third obligatory question is anybody on their smartphone?
Well, I'm actually
Well,
on my smartphone.
Okay, cool. Andor, yeah. Anyone else?
it's beside me.
It's beside you. Okay.
Yeah.
So I know that slides only help if you can see them. And I know some of you may be driving home or just on the move, cooking dinner. So what I'll do is make this as verbal as possible, especially for those who can't see the screen. Now, first of all, thank you again for this invitation. This is going to be a discussion. And I love the fact that we have enough persons on the call to have a discussion tonight. What we're going to discuss is careers in web development. And I caught the tail end of what you were just discussing. I thought that was excellent because it was first of all, it was a breadth of knowledge, and I like the discussion about the framework. But you also said web development. And so that means we're on the same track. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Because this field used to be called something different not too long ago. But we'll see what I'm talking about shortly. As Alden said, my name is Chris Durrell. Let's go through what we'll be looking at today. We'll be looking at web development. We're not talking about website development, and I think that's an important distinction for us to make from the start of the conversation. A website, as many of you may know, but some of you may not know, is a collection of web pages. And so just like you have a house, a site, a building site, a construction site, which has a collection of walls, rooms, etc., a website is a very basic collection of these components. But when we're talking about web development, we're talking about something bigger. We're talking about the development of the web. And the web has so many different components now that this field has changed. So what we're talking about today is web development rather than website. Now, that said, what are the components of web development that we'll be discussing? Well, web development typically comprises of 3 areas, and as you can see, there are 4. So one of those areas is not mathematics, but it comprises of design of screens and workflows, setting up of that server to host it, securing the website, as well as quality testing and assurance, which I just heard Shane mention. And that's what we'll be looking at very briefly. Now, what we'll be looking at is why web, jobs versus careers in web, types of web roles, exciting web technologies, web jobs and opportunities, as well as a decision matrix. So if you're coming into this looking at why should you go into web or should you go into web and something else, then this is a good time for us to actually discuss. And I think that's important because my journey is kind of backwards in the sense that when I graduated from UWI, I remember deciding to myself, the last thing I'm going to do is build something that uses the internet. Because in my head, I was like, nah, why would I do that? And then I'm on the road and I don't have internet on my phone, and suddenly my app is like a dead brick in my hand, or my phone is like a dead brick because it doesn't respond. That to me was counterintuitive. And so in my juvenile mind, my young mind, I'm like, there's no way it makes sense to build anything for the web. And in fact, as far as I knew, the internet was going to go down at some point in the future. So for me, it didn't make sense to stick to something that is so out of my control. But here I am now. So let's also look at what we won't be looking at. First of all, we won't be looking at the best front-end frameworks. I think that was just discussed. Definitely staying away from that. Second, we're not going to be looking at show code versus low code versus no code, right? We won't be looking into any deep dives into AI tonight. We might touch it briefly, but we won't deep dive into how to use it, just more the view of AI going into the future of web. And then we won't be looking at the best coding languages to learn, because as you know, it depends. I heard somebody mention Python just now. So I don't want to touch that because it does depend, but it's probably JavaScript, but you know, it does depend. It's probably JavaScript. Right. Just to give you a little bit of backstory, because a backstory is always important to give you context. I've been doing software development since 2014, and that's while I was in university. I decided that just following what was being taught wouldn't help as much as I wanted. So after we finished our first year course in Java at UWI, I decided to learn how to build some Android apps on my own. But I've been breaking things apart since I was young. I love teaching, love teaching. In fact, if you get me in a explaining situation, I will try my best to break it down. And sometimes I have to be reminded of the audience because you don't want to break it down too far, especially with technical excellence like Andor here, who I know Andor is, you know, quite advanced in the topic. But I love teaching, I love developing technology, and I'm a follower of Christ, right? And that is a big part of the story. In fact, the story wouldn't be here without that. I currently lead the web development team at Adtelligent. So we're a marketing agency, and I used to lead the Google Ads department as well as web. And my passion is pretty simple. See complex problems broken down to their parts and to help people access the resources they need to come to the solution. It's very simple. In fact, if you see me on the road and you ask me something and you're like, boy, I can't get my phone to work, or I was trying to pay with Link and Link is not working, I'm going to help you figure it out to the point where you say, are you being paid by Link? And I'll say, no, I have no shares in Link. I just want to see you get to the solution. And if I understand the audience, based on what Alden has shared, many of you might actually fall along that same line in terms of you're the tech support in your household, or you are just the tech support at your company. Whether you intend to be or not, you end up helping people. Right? So that's something to keep in mind. Making people more productive is the name of the game, and technology is the means to achieve it, right? And it's something that you have to be taught. You know, it's not automatic. You have to be taught. Now, that said, before we jump into the meat of the matter, I've met Andor briefly, but I'd also like to know who else is on the call. So if you could just introduce yourself briefly, if you're not driving or cooking with one hand and with the phone in the other, if you could just introduce with your name, what you do, and what you're hoping to get tonight.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So my name is Jason Williams, right? And I heard you mention something about JavaScript possibly being the best. I do agree, even though we're not here for that. We're not here for that though, right? But I am a which hat am I wearing right now? All right, I'm a digital marketer, right? And I've done some web development in the past, so I'm very interested to hear you speak on it and leave from this meeting having learned something new.
Like that, and you definitely will. Thanks, Jason. Nice to meet you. Of course, I've met Shane from UWI. Anyone else?
I guess I'll go. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cleon. Currently a full stack developer. What I aim to learn from this, I just like to learn from Chris's experience. Yeah, you never know, you can learn from someone else. Yeah, that's for me.
That's a beautiful way to approach it. So nice to meet you, Cleon. It's 2 people on the call. Oh gosh, man. Anyone else? I should also mention, in case it matters, that what you're hearing is a genuine accent. I'm not twanging. I'm from Barbados originally, but I've been in Jamaica for 10 years now. So Jamaica is home. All right, one more and then we jump right in.
I'm volunteer Maya.
Okay.
Maya, do you want to introduce yourself?
All right. But I see Charma has actually written in the chat. This
Oh,
is
thank
my
you.
name is Charma, right? And I'm an aspiring web developer focusing on C and .NET and .NET framework, looking to learn more about the field. And I'm a web, and this would be now from Moya saying I am a web developer as well.
That's excellent. Charma, I'm going to dig a little deeper. Are you self-taught or did you learn on the job or did you learn at school? Okay. Because going the C route and the .NET route is
school and self-taught.
Okay, nice. Okay, that's cool. And that's interesting because the C route is not a typical route.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. And Moya, nice to meet you as well. So guys, I'm not seeing the chat just because it's not on the screen right now. So I will just proceed as if until I'm prompted by Alden or Oshin, and then we can just jump into this. So we have a breadth of difference on the platform, but everybody has experience with web, which I think is very important. Because what we're going to be looking at is very specific to a set of people. So if any of you are persons who had never had experience with web, this would not be a useful conversation, I don't think, personally. This is really a talk for persons who are looking for web jobs, persons who are interested in general technology adoption, web developers who are already doing it, but looking at increasing their skill set, and then persons who are against the web-only route. So you're interested in coding, but you don't necessarily want to do web alone. You want to do mobile apps and web, or you want to touch the blockchain and do smart contracts and web, or you want to do one of the other interesting things I'm going to mention to you shortly, but you don't want to just be a web developer. And I think that all of you fall into this category. So what are we going to start with, right? First things first. The web is an ever-changing landscape. And that's one of the reasons I don't think it makes sense for us to talk about frameworks, because frameworks are very dynamic. They change so rapidly that, you know, as you decide on a framework and you start to build out a web application, you'll find that something new has come out, something shinier, and you know, now your framework is outdated. There may be different levels of web experience on this call, but some of you would have used the original Angular. And if you've been on that Angular roller coaster, and I'm not going to spend too much on this, but if you've been on the Angular roller coaster, I am sorry. And at the end of this, we can definitely have a conversation that will be close to therapy. But Angular has gone up and down and up and down and up and down, and is now being relaunched again. Right. And so I don't want to focus on frameworks. I want to focus on what you can do with the web and how you can apply your personal skill set into expanding what you're currently doing or in anything you want to learn. One of the best ways to get started with the web is to build your own project, right? And why do I say that? At Telligent, I've been here for 6 years now. And over that time, one of my responsibilities has been doing job fairs, doing recruiting directly. So I'll reach out to people on LinkedIn, reach out through like Dr. Mansingh. I'll ask Dr. Mansingh for recommendations at UWI. And so I've done, I don't have an exact number, but let's say at least 30 interviews, here. And persons have asked me as well, like, what would have made the difference? Or what is it that would really help me in getting this job or getting a job somewhere else? And as an interviewer, I can speak for Adtelligent because we're very choosy, is you must come with a portfolio, right? We don't want to hear about a web developer who loves web developing and then you ask, what have you built? And they say, what was that course? Comp 20? No, we really don't want to hear about that. Unless we're hiring you fresh out of university on purpose. We're expecting someone who says that they love web or has an interest in web, to have built something on their own with their own initiative. And so I'm hoping that that comes out clearly, like you must come with a portfolio of work. And I'll give you two examples just to showcase that. One good, one bad. I wonder if I should start with the good first. Yeah, start with the good first. So there was a guy that came for an interview. He was about 30 something. He started web development late, and he actually worked at a food company here in Jamaica. So he was working with them in not a web development role, but his passion was web development. And so he came with this mismatched resume that, you know, says food company, Ingredientes was the name of the company. And when he showed us his portfolio, he made his own virtual DJ using web. He made all these interesting projects that he just was interested in using web platforms. And so that made him a very high candidate, right, with us. Now, I will say that he didn't end up working with us because we made the decision kind of together that he wasn't a good fit. And that was because he told us that his plan was actually to migrate in about a year. And that wouldn't have made sense for us as a company who's trying to build from where we are. But he did go on to work at Link, right? And I saw him the other day, and he's using his web skills now because he's actually passionate about it. I'll contrast that with another candidate who came, a young lady who had just graduated from UWI. I think she did comp-sci as well. And she started her master's. And she may have been tipped off about me because I am a heavy, heavy proponent of Wix. In fact, I'll choose Wix day and night, more than likely, to build because it is such a powerful platform. But in the interview, we sat down, we had the discussion about her interests, and she looks up and she's like, I love Wix. And I was like, hold on. I will tell you that. But I always challenge what I hear. So I said, great. When last did you use it? Now, mark you, this lady is going into her master's program. So she had just started a master's. And she said, grade 9. Right. Now, that was an easy red flag for us, and that didn't go anywhere because it's very hard for you to say you love something and you haven't touched it in at least, I think, 6 or 7 years, right? So whatever you're passionate about, especially if it's web, make sure it comes out in your portfolio. Make sure you have a body of work to show when you're applying for jobs. And it doesn't have to be something that's along a specific course line. Build something you're interested in. I remember the first app I built was because I was part of the Steel Pan group on campus, and we needed a better way to take bookings because we couldn't just take the call and then forget what Alden said. That wasn't helping the client and it wasn't helping us. And so I said, I'm going to build an app that has a database so we can store the bookings. That's it. What did that help me do? It helped me learn how to code, taught me a bit about database querying before we even got into that at UWI. And it definitely would have helped with my grades. And I did graduate really well, bless God. But it also helped me understand how to interact with other persons, how to build something that is useful, that you want others to use. And that's very important for web, because at the end of the day, if you build a site that only you can use, the utility is very low. And that isn't necessarily going to be something that you'd be happy to share. So fill your portfolio and build projects you're interested in. Now, that's the personal advice. Let's look at some of the web roles and responsibilities that exist. This is a sub list, but let's go through a couple of them quickly. You have UI UX, front-end developer, web animator, and I'll touch on those briefly. And then for the backend, again, sub list, you have the backend developers, someone who's developing out the server and the server-side language, whichever they choose to write in. You have cross-platform developers who are primarily mobile or primarily web, but are building for both. And you have web security, which of course, those are the persons that are setting up the unattractive parts of the website that are still necessary. So the SSL certificate, having their, I forget what it's called, Let's Encrypt bot run every 90 days to refresh the certificate. Persons who are making sure the database guys are actually encrypting what they have, both in flight and at rest. They have a very pivotal part in building out websites as well. Now, each of these pathways can be a career, right? So these are roles and responsibilities, but each of them can be a career. I know a brilliant UI UX designer who came out of a graphic design background. And when I asked him, because, you know, I wanted to ask him for my own learning, but I think it's a benefit if I share with you. I'm like, how did you get so good, right? How do you get so good at UX, UI? And when I say UX, UI, I don't just mean dropping a Figma mockup. I mean, thinking through the way the person is going to sign in on the website to the flow that must automatically happen. They shouldn't have to click another button after they've signed in to go to the next phase. And so understanding the user's workflow, what they need to see first, whether it's an image of a happy team or a button that just says apply for job, thinking that through. And he was brilliant at this. He is brilliant at this. So I asked him, you know, how did you get so good? And what he told me is that from his dad is also a graphic designer. So from he was very young, you know, he and his dad would be doing graphic design, and he would learn from his dad over these many, many years. But when he got older, what he started to do is just read magazines. So he'd pick up design magazines and just go through them and look at the designs in the magazine, kind of study them. And then he would apply that art style, because magazines, you know, are, or you may not know, but magazines are designed in a very intricate way. You'll see one big image and you see the text wrapping around the magazine, and you have to be very careful with the real estate in the magazine. And so he took that and applied that to the web. Now, his passion is graphic design. If you talk to him today, he would do graphic design for you. But he used that design interest. He stoked it with his own research, and then he applied it in his work. And I think that that's a very powerful framework. I'm going to come back to it, but making sure that whatever you apply yourself to, because we're talking about careers in web, not just jobs in web, is something that you are passionate about, right? Figure out what it is you're actually passionate about, and then find a way to stoke it or train it, hone it, because raw talent doesn't do anything if you're not working hard, and then apply it to a field. So that's something he did, and something I have seen with persons who have, you know, not just natural talent, but a good work ethic that leads them to be successful. Front-end developers are persons who can integrate and implement the design. So you may find in larger teams that they're separate from the UX UI designer. We worked with a team that we did the UX UI for them, but then they had to implement it. So we handed off our Figma design to them, then they had to implement it in Bootstrap. Sorry for those of you who just cringed, but Bootstrap to get that design done. That's what I consider a front-end developer, someone who can actually do the implementation. Notice I didn't say code, because you can use Wix. You're catching on. Then you have web animators. Web animator is an old field, but it has new tricks, for lack of a better term, because web animation frameworks are becoming a little more standardized. And when I say web animation, just to be clear, I'm not necessarily talking about making something float from left to right. I'm more specifically talking about SVG animations, which are scalable vector graphics, and they are lightweight animations that you'll see on many large websites that are picking up steam because of the nice flair that they add to the website. It's a front-end only thing. One of the very popular tools to do web animation right now is something called Lottie. That's Lottie. It's an excellent tool, and it is a lightweight way to add animations to your website. Now, the beautiful thing for those of you just starting a web is if you want to try a Lottie animation on your website any day, you can do that quite simply. Just like you would go on Shutterstock and find a nice image, or ChatGPT and get some nice copy for your website, Lottie gives you the ability to add nice animations to your website without having to design them from scratch, because they have a nice big library of animations. So that's Lottie, Lottie animations. And disclosure, I am the Lottie evangelist for Jamaica. So that's also why I suggest them. Backend development is specific to making sure that, how I'd say, the server side of your site is responding to the front end actions. That can be in many different ways, but a very common way is making sure that the APIs that happen on button click or on front end call are properly responded to with your code on the backend. That can be done in many different ways. There are many different frameworks that handle this API response, this dance of call and response. But a backend developer is usually tasked with coding the server that can respond accurately. And there are different ways of building. It also depends on who you're working with. Some of you may be working on projects by yourself. And so your web development would more follow what's called a microservice. But there's another type of development that backend developers know about called monolith development. Big old monolith, big old piece of rock, right? A monolith, where the entire code base is, I should say, it's not segmented. It's one big code base that you're running. And I wish I could say there are pros and cons to each. I'm sure there are. I just want you to know they exist so that when you face monoliths or microservices, you'll know the difference. Cross-platform developers, we're going to look a little bit more into that. And then web security is a big field. And of course, it's something you can get certified in. And maybe some of you already are looking at certification in web security right now, especially considering that December 1st will be the JDPA's big launch. And we'll have the Data Protection Act, which very heavily affects web development and websites. And that's going to be even more important than it is today. Right, so these are just a couple of fields. Before I jump ahead, let me know if you have any questions, read this.
Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. And if you'd like, you can also raise your hands. Okay, so where is testing? We actually get a question here. Where is testing?
Good question. It's missing. It's missing, but it definitely would be on this list. And it wouldn't even fall under one because you have, as you know, both front-end and back-end testing. So that's missing for sure.
So we're not seeing any more questions. So I guess we can proceed. And we can run back to at the end if there are any persons that have questions but weren't able to raise it now.
Yeah. And if you want to jump in, I mean, please do. Please do. Nice. Where's full stack development? Excellent. So we will definitely touch on that. But full stack is there. Full stack, of course, would be a merger of any of these. So front-end developer and back-end developer, UI, UX, front-end and back-end. And in some cases, UI, UX, front-end, back-end, and cross-platform. Okie dokes. All right. So since we're talking about careers tonight, I want to briefly touch on sometimes everything, for real. So including DevOps. So since we're touching about careers tonight, right, I want to just look at 4 different types of career path in web and the benefits, that you can have from each. And I will say out to the bat, some of them have more benefits than others, right? So let's start with freelance. Freelance is a very typical model for developers because you find that you have free time. And so therefore you want to make use of that time instead of Snapchat or instead of Instagram. You decide you're going to use your additional time and do development for another company. It can be an agency, it could be an individual organization. When I was preparing this, I was wondering, why don't they just call it freelance, F-E-E-lance, because you're actually paying something. So technically, it could be freelance. So if you guys make that work, just let me know. Freelancing. Now, freelance has a big benefit in that when you are touching many different types of clients, if you're the type of person that likes to learn, and that could be learn different industries or learn different ways that businesses run for yourself. Freelance gives you the ability to be in many different places, for lack of a better word, where you can pull a lot of learning while earning. The difficulty with freelance, and this is something I've heard from persons who hire freelance developers, both here and in the US, is that some of you may be freelancing now. What happens is when the pressure gets too heavy on a lot of developers, I wish I could say it's a minority, but when the pressure gets too heavy on a developer, there are many times that they just disappear on the person who has hired them. And that's a common trend. It could be for a variety of reasons. It could be the fact that in web development, you have the skill set to fix any problem. And so in your development, after your client has said, boy, can you build this new integration? You realize that you told them it would take 3 hours, but it actually is going to take 30. And you have no idea how to communicate that. And so what some developers tend to do is just shut down or disappear, ghost, blue tick, any word you want to put to it. And that's because of a lack of business knowledge, business acumen, like how to have that conversation with the client and say, you know, in my research, I realized that it's actually going to take a lot longer and I'm going to have to charge you for this. 2, many freelancers don't have contracts per job because they think it's either a small job or that they're not big enough to have a contract, whereas your contract is your best friend. The contract is what allows you to say, you know, that actually wasn't in the contract. So we'd have to do a separate scope for that without putting yourself at risk of hurting somebody's feelings in your head. But in some cases, freelancers just can't handle the level of work that they've taken on. Even if they wanted to respond, what happens is they'll respond, but they'll be very delayed in delivery. And so there are definitely some downsides, I'd say, but things to keep in mind if you decide to go the freelance track. Now, having been with Intelligent for 6 years, I can tell you that you also lose this, like, I don't even know how to word it. Maybe Andor, if he's on the call, would understand how to describe it, but you lose this ability to ping ideas off of other persons, other creatives. When you're doing freelance, you have to kind of form your own community or pray to God that he gives you one. But you lose that ability to look to your right and left in your office and say, hey, Bob, what do you think about this design? We're going to put the button here, and then Bob can say, you know, the way that you have the orange button is nice, but it needs a little more breathing room. He doesn't know how to say exactly what it is you should do. That's your job. But the freelancer loses that opportunity to ping ideas off of people very quickly. They may be able to do it by sending somebody, but there's nobody who has the same level of buy-in to seeing the project succeed as that freelancer himself or herself. So things to keep in mind with freelance or freelancing. Now, another track is dedicated developer. That is when you have a job, a formal job with a company as their in-house web developer. So your job could be maintaining their website, whether they're a SaaS platform and you have to update the actual code if you're a backend developer that makes it function, or the marketing site that people sign up at and pay at. You are dedicated and you're growing in the role of managing that site. That's something I had to do at my previous job. And it also has its benefits. One, you have a salary, right? So you're not really paid on deliverable. Your job is to maintain the website. If it goes down, it's your fault. If it's up and it looks good, well, nobody pats you on the back, but you feel good because the website is functioning as it would. That is also something to keep in mind. Dedicated developers have that stability of a salary. They have somebody that they report to that they can consistently get access to. So unlike these other 3 tracks, your boss or your manager works with you. All right, so you can continue to go to them and say, hey, we've made this change or we want to make this change. And sometimes that can speed up the velocity of publishing. But of course, there are cons to dedicated developer, which is that the scope of your learning is this platform. The scope of learning that you have, if you're not careful to continue to learn, is we are doing a healthcare website. I'm going to learn a lot about healthcare. But if you ask me anything about tourism or education, boy, I am lost. And so dedicated developers do have that very narrow scope because their job is managing that website. Then you have agency work. And this can be development agencies or marketing agencies. And there are quite a few around the world. There's a beautiful agency that I would say I look up to forget the name of the country, Georgia, right? In the country of Georgia, not the state, called Redberry. And their job is really that governments and other agencies will come to them and they'll have this discussion about what they have in their mind. But Redberry's job is to do the research, to come up with the strategy. So they're not just putting things on a page and then to implement it. And agency work to me is, it can be the most fun because you're touching so many different industries that you're learning a lot. For Intelligent, we've had to do that as well. We've dealt with tourism. So we worked with the top hotel in Ocho Rios for a number of years, building landing pages and doing ad campaigns for them. Jamaica Inn is the name. And one of the things we did is we created a campaign to the UK, one to France, one to Germany, to get persons to come to Jamaica Inn for different things like destination weddings and, villas and setting up. And what you learn is that you can't market everything in the tourism industry the same way. Jamaica Inn, like the hotel rooms, the rooms probably start, I think, around 490 US per night and go up to 1,000 US per person per night, right? So you have to figure out how is it that we communicate this so people don't think it's, no disrespect, sandcastles, or don't think it's an Airbnb. This is something luxury. And so you get to learn that, but while you're learning that, then you're preparing yourself to learn how to do food and beverage because we work with Grace Kennedy. You get to learn how to do furniture because we have furniture clients. And so agency work gives you a breadth of knowledge. It's wide. It's not necessarily deep, but it is wide. And agency work does have a lot of perks. So if you like learning a lot, you learn a lot, like about the industry. It's not just about web. Agency work, of course, will have its downsides as well, in that it is easier, probably not as easy as the freelance, but it is easy for the client to let go. When you're in an agency business, your competitor is usually other agencies. And so if you're not able to show why you are better or why your strategy is going to increase their bottom line, so either decrease costs or increase revenue, then you can lose your contract. And it's not as hard as people think. It's quite hard to maintain, but it's quite easy to lose. And so agency work can be kind of tumultuous, where you're working with somebody for 1 year, and then somebody next door says, hey, I can do it for half the price, the same thing they're doing, and they're like, what? Let's just try you instead. And then you lose the contract. I'll give you a quick story because I forgot to ask Alden how much time I had before I started. But we did a pitch to a government agency obviously in Jamaica. And the pitch was for a mobile app and a website for a platform that they wanted to build, not just a website, but a web platform. And we sat in the room. We made it to the end point of the rounds, because you had rounds for the bid when you're working with a government agency. And in our conversation with them, one of the evaluators was a professor here in Jamaica. So a professor at a school. I'm being careful to protect identity. Professor at a school. And he looked at us, he saw our price, he saw our pitch, our 41-page presentation on why we should do it this way. And then looked at us and said, why would I pay you guys when I can go to India? And we sat there and we're like, but that's exactly the problem. Because there are persons who will buy on price rather than quality. And so he said to himself, why would we pay for you guys when you're more expensive, way more expensive than an Indian company could do it in his head? And we didn't win that contract. It wasn't an Indian company that won, it was another Jamaican company. So that's good. But the thought process about buying based on price rather than quality is in many big organizations because they don't know the difference between a simple website and a complex website. And unless you take the time as an agency to inform persons, then they're not going to really take it up themselves. It's not their field, it's your field. Your job is to explain the difference between a landing page and a web platform. Yeah, O'Shane.
Yeah, so if you don't mind sharing, did you give him an answer? And if you did, are you willing to share? I'm curious.
Sure. We did, and coming out of that meeting, I have a stronger one now because I've spoken to persons who have taken big contracts to India and they always get bitten. But our response was about, well, my response I think was about the quality, and my CEO touched on, building up Jamaica. And I think I can't remember the exact words, but I know we left the meeting and discussed it, and we're like, how is it that someone who is a professor in Jamaica, whose job is educating the minds, is saying instead of paying the minds who are here, go to India instead? I know that's the impression we were left with by that comment, and it's not. I wish it was unique, but that was the comment that came up. How I would respond now is that persons have tried it before, just buying on cost, but then they end up having to rebuild what was done and come to get quality rather than outsource nonsense, garbage.
May I join in the conversation just?
Of course.
Comment.
Sounds like you have experience.
Yes, because just for everybody to understand where I'm coming from, I started agency work 15 years ago in London. And my point was always web technologies, but I tried to, and that's a good combining freelancing and agency work, because I could jump agency to agency. I just collected so much experience, how they're structuring the in-house team, what sort of leadership they're using and creative ideas. So it gave a lot. Obviously, that was more stressful and less safe compared to being a dedicated developer. But how Christopher mentioned, dedicated developer will never have that overview and all the different angles and knowledge. If you're freelancing, especially in an agency environment, when the trillions of creative ideas, they always want to push the technology to its limits, try to do something that nobody did before, So I'm very much agreeing with that. And now with open source outsourcing, the interesting thing, I am in-house building a training program because I want to train my own employees. I don't believe blindly outsourcing thing because quality, how well the thing is communicated, how well the architecture is designed, I think it's key. And way better to invest into education in Jamaica and bring up all the talents to high quality and up-to-date knowledge rather than just thinking cheap outsourcing.
Yeah, longevity.
Yeah.
Okay. I can actually second both points. Because a bit, I could say I run an agency as well.
Yeah.
But to the response you gave, funnily, that's a similar response I would have given. In addition, what I also tend to say is that when I do like agency work or I tend to try to win over clients, I put in that custom tailored approach. With Iona Indian company or other companies outside of Jamaica, you'll see that they don't necessarily care about the success of the project. Of course, meaning they do care about it, but it's more on the money side, while we care more about the overall impact. So it's more towards positioning my company towards like a technical arm for them to ensure that the success of the project is done in the right way, the right order. And it's more than just the development side. It's also how can we garner and impact that project to where that when it goes to market, it will have customers immediately. So it's the big picture of bringing a product to fruition, to the market, holding on with the client to ensure that their objective is fully met, not just from the development side, but from the business objective side. So that's something that I tend to like add in, like pretty much we also be like an acting CTO to ensure that the business itself is successful and not just the project.
I like that. I like that. Actually, I love that. So on what O'Shane said, right? Just to put some more meat on it, we have also taken that approach because we've been cried down on price a couple of times, because we're typically expensive compared for the Jamaican market. But we've mentioned that what O'Shane just mentioned, which is that one of the things we have is we have a physical office. You know, we're right here in Crossroads. So if you want to come talk to us, we're here. We're not moving. We're not at home, and we're also a one phone call away. And this is a big push for me because I don't think Jamaica realizes what Jamaica has. You guys have what I call the triple whammy, or I should say we have what I call the triple whammy, which is that one, we have the same time zone as most of the US, the Eastern US. Two, we speak the same language. And three, we're one flight away, right? So it's inconceivable that if we do have the talent here and we can communicate and build the quality, that persons should be going across the world where they're battling different language. The time zone is that they have to develop or leave their comments, and then the developers are working while they're sleeping. So there's always at least that 12-hour delay, 10 to 12 hours. And, you know, we're one flight away. Like, we can physically go and meet persons in the US. We can benefit and they can come down here and work with us. I think that that is a massive opportunity. But of course, sometimes you need outsiders to come and tell you that you have the opportunity because you don't see it yourself. But Jamaica is poised to do amazing things. And of course, I'm all for competition, you know. So and by the way, when I say Indian developers, I'm using that as an archetype. I'm not specifically calling out India. It could be Ukrainian developers, it could be Russian. But what I'm saying is that if we can build the quality here, then we need to be hiring and working here. And we are an employer. So I'm not talking as someone who's a freelancer saying, boy, this is something that you guys should do. We have to do it if we're going to build up Jamaica. Otherwise, the brightest, you guys, are going to leave. And then we get stuck with the what left. And the what left can't build what we want to build. Yeah, go ahead, Terry.
But look, don't you think the government could play a role in this, or should play a role, or have a kind of a strategy to build up the development sector, the software industry? Okay.
Let me just say, they do, and it's in effect with a particular company, not going to call their name, but it may work and it may not work. But at the same time, the government is one aspect of the whole solution. There's also the private sector can and is stepping up to ensure that we do have great developers in Jamaica and building out great infrastructures and website. But at the same time, the private sector and the government can do so much and no more. There's also the individual developers doing freelance work, doing WordPress site, not knowing best practices and so forth. And when these sites get hacked and so forth, then it does look bad on that company and the individual and Jamaica on a whole. So it's more about not just developer companies and government, it's collectively how we can come together to ensure that regardless of which entity or person, best practices, quality is always upheld throughout Jamaica.
Yeah, and let me jump in quickly there because I also agree that government has to play a role. It won't be the final thing, though. It may not even be the main stakeholder. So as Alden mentioned, I also help co-lead a nonprofit called Youth Can Do IT. We've been around for 7 years and we've taught over 2,500 kids how to code in Scratch, basic web development. And that has been something that we've done over the years. Why do I say it can't be government alone? We have taught basic coding in Scratch. I'm not sure how many of you have used Scratch before, but Scratch is a block-based programming language that allows kids to learn how to code by just dragging and dropping. And when we go to these kids, we teach them how to move a sprite, so move the object from here to here. We teach them how to touch something on the page, and then it will increase the scorecard. And by the time we turn around and come back, the kids have created a game with a cat flying through space, picking up cheese with laser beams coming out of their eyes, that every time you touch the cheese, the scorecard increases. My point is that while the job is to teach the basics, a lot of these kids have the ideas in their head from before high school, before university, and they are brilliant. We're working with a couple of kids from 10 to 16 right now. They are brilliant. And I don't think it's government that's going to be the factor that allows us to excel. And if you have young siblings right now, some of them are on Roblox, but some of them are building businesses on Roblox right now. Some of them are building their own empires on Roblox right now, and they're learning some of the skills that they need to be successful developers and business persons later on. And I don't think it's government that's going to teach us how to use that skill set and transfer it to Jamaica. I think that is going to be the schools, but also very importantly, the small communities that those kids find themselves in. Whether it's their swimming club and they find out that 5 kids at their swimming club love to code too, then they talk to them. Whether it's Youth Can Do IT, or whether it's the developer community here, like JA Dev. This is where that's going to get built up.
All right. So we do have a hand raised, just so that we don't have his hand
Sure. So
get
things
dislocated.
so that things don't get out of hand. I got you.
Yes. Yes, so that things don't get out of hand. All right. Go ahead, Terry.
Night, everyone.
Hey,
You know, I found it interesting, you know, as Mr. Darrell began speaking, he kind of highlighted the distinction between a website and the web in itself, in and of itself, or the web as, you know, 2 different things. And you know, and also the government story that you gave about, you know, trying to win the contract and them believing that you know, it's probably too costly or what have you. And from, you know, those 2 scenarios or instances, of the impression that the Jamaicans and Jamaican businesses don't really, well, it's really a question, you know, given your experience in the field, would you say that Jamaicans and Jamaican businesses really value what developers and persons in tech have to offer in their businesses? Because, you know, I'm kind of the view that they really don't, but you know, you have the experience in the field, you would have, you know, had experiences as you highlighted with the whole government and trying to win the contract. You'd be the best person to answer that for me.
Well, maybe better. I wouldn't say the best, but for sure the answer is no. And I'm not even deluded by that anymore. I do believe that Jamaican businesses do not understand the value of web, tech in general, but web especially, for their business. So for a long time I was of the view, and a lot of people are of the view, that I'm not sure if you guys know the technology adoption life cycle. I'll just Google it really quickly because it's a nice graphic that kind of shows things clearly. And it came from a book called Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. But basically, you have in any technology or any sphere of technology, let me see if I can make it a little bigger. Right, any sphere of technology, you will have persons who adopt technology really early. The innovators who don't even care if something is buggy, they just take it up. Then you have early adopters where it's starting to get into the mainstream. Hasn't reached there yet, but persons are still fault tolerant. So if they can't log in once every 100 times, they're still fine with that. But they're not as willing to take risky software usage as the innovators who will pick up a VR headset before anybody else uses VR and it will get them sick and nauseous, and then they fall down, but then they put it back on. That's the innovator. Early adopters, like all their friends in their class have a VR headset and they want to get one too before Jamaica finds out. So I bring this up because the thought is that websites should be early majority or late majority right now, where most businesses would have a website in theory, and you'd be getting to the point of where laggards are now saying, oh gosh, everybody else has a website. We're like the last 15%. Web is necessary for everybody. But I don't think we've even reached late majority yet. If you check the JDF's website, Jamaica Defense Force, it's outdated. Many government websites were terrible. A lot of them have updated since then. They're responsive now because somebody must be pushing for it within that government agency. But if you ask the persons who are, signing off on the investment to upgrade the website, if it's really valuable, I don't think they would understand the benefit of having a better website, if you understand, Terry. They might be agreeing to it, but understanding it is a totally different thing. And so just based on discussions we've had discussions with retailers to do e-commerce. And it's still an educational push to show people why they should do this, because people don't really care about the tech. They care about the cash in the bank most of the time. But even when you explain how a website can contribute to that, there's still a bit of an educational gap and some persuasion that still needs to happen. So that's the long answer to say, no, I don't think they do. What I will say though, is I remember Trevor Forrest years ago said something interesting, which is that it's not governments that make rich countries, it's rich companies that make rich countries. And that stuck with me. I can't remember if he said it, but it stuck with me when it was said, because that is something to keep in mind, that there are individual organizations who really do get it within Jamaica. We have a client that's a church, one of our largest clients ever, ironically enough, here in Jamaica. And they get it. They're doing a lot of the necessary things that it's hard to get businesses to do with their website, with integrating with other software, etc. And so don't give up hope is what I'm trying to say in like a small thing. Don't give up hope, because there are some people who get it. They've been educated. They've seen other countries do it or organizations do it. And so they will push it in their small circle. And then that's how it gets into the other circles. When somebody's like, oh, you did this with your website and it can do this now. Oh, you don't have to drive to the bank and get robbed like a beryllium truck. Oh, all your money goes to the bank immediately. Wow, how'd you do that? And that's how the conversation progresses.
Right, thank you for that.
No problem. I hope that wasn't too long. Yeah, Under.
So I would just reflect on 2 points. Yes, it's companies who making a country big and strong, but the governments has the tool to sabotage these companies. And in my opinion, in Jamaica, they do a very good job at that, unfortunately.
Oh,
but to say something positive, what you just mentioned earlier, what a big potential to work, let's say, with the US. I don't think we developers in Jamaica need to over-focus what skills we can sell in Jamaica. It's way better for us to learn how to get global clients from Jamaica. Because, in the US, UK, Europe, there's big markets and people very forward thinking. They want these new technologies. So that's a way bigger opportunity for Jamaican developers. And once you establish yourself on the global markets, then trust me, Jamaican companies will look up on you. Do you just a nice Jamaican person try to persuade them from your goodwill? They will never listen. If you prove yourself on the global scene, right away you will be the big expert and the star in their eye. So from both ways, if you want to establish yourself, it's better to start in global markets. And if you want to bring a change to Jamaica, it's way better to establish and prove yourself on other markets. And then you will be very respected, no?
100%.
Yeah, I just want to add and make this fast because time is coming upon us.
Yeah.
Both statements align with the objectives of the community and also my company. Because
And hold
from the
on, let me
community,
let me jump in, Ocean, because I
okay,
was gonna say I need you, like, I want to point to you guys because a lot of freelance developers are alone. They're alone with their thoughts, they're alone in their room. But what your community does is you give a collective voice. And it's very important for developers to be part of the community. So yeah, back to you.
okay, okay. Thank you. So that's actually a good point as well, which I think I don't need to go into one of the things that I was going to say, but one of our focus is pretty much changing Jamaica from like a consumer of technology to a producer of technology in the right way by producing world-class quality products and services that will impact not just the nation, but the region, the Caribbean region, and a whole. And a part of what I'm trying to do with my company, we still have a long way to go, but
Mm.
like that type of change from like a company creating the wealth for Jamaican first the Caribbean per se is pretty much trying to create like a one of those big five companies, tech companies in the world. Because once like there's like a technological revolutionary company that are impacting the region as well as other countries, I think that will generate a lot of eyes towards Jamaica. And I'll say this by like my company has been reached out many times by like big tech companies, Oracle, Facebook, and so forth, through the community asking, can we get developers from Jamaica and
Oh,
the Caribbean and so forth?
wow.
I would initially have a discussion and so forth, but one of the issues that recurring issues, we don't necessarily have like the visible numbers. We have the talent and we do have the numbers, but the issue is it's not visible. There's no way to showcase that we are making a large impact in the region and the world. So it's also getting that collectiveness that we do have the numbers, we do have a lot of talent in the region to make an impact, because that's how we will attract overseas companies to come and hire a lot of us to do either dedicated or freelance work, not to mention companies.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, so I'll let that sink in for half a second because I only have about half a second left.
Oh, well,
But-
we're wrapping up at 8 o'clock, so
No, yeah. So
Yeah, but it appears that Chris actually has a lot of stuff, because he did actually mention there were a couple stuff he wanted to get in terms
yeah,
of future technology and all of that stuff.
and we'll touch it just briefly enough that it will stick with you.
All right.
yeah.
So, all right, let's jump to entrepreneur. It follows what Oshane was saying, and this is a different group from the three. This is a software developer who is doing web development with the intention of building a business, right? So the freelancer is fine staying on his own. He himself may outsource graphic design work or the parts that he can't handle. But the entrepreneur is someone who has coding experience, but their plan is actually to start a business. And this person can come out of any of the other three groups, right? But this is a pathway where maybe you were an agency developer and you learned so much about the beverage industry that you want to start your own water e-commerce business, right? So you're no longer just building a website, you're building a business. And that is a possible path that can come out of the web development discussion. So these are 4 tracks, by no means all, but things to consider. Each of them has pros and cons. Entrepreneur, of course, has many pros, but many cons. People think that being an entrepreneur means that you get to work 4 hours a day or 4 hours a week. But you'll find most entrepreneurs are working 12 hours a day or more just to get their business to grow. And so that's something to keep in mind as well. If you take that track, many lucrative benefits because you're building wealth and your equity in your company is 100%, right? Your equity in your company is 100%. And so you own everything. So any dollar that comes into your company really does go to building your company, and you can invest in team, invest in servers, but the business is yours. Of course, the con or the negative side of that is if the business fails, that's also yours. So something to keep in mind. It's not for everyone. I firmly hold to that. I believe most people can learn entrepreneurship in terms of how to make business decisions, how to be decisive and go a direction and not get strayed by every new technology, which is what I'm about to do to you by telling you about them. And a business person can focus. But I do believe at this current point that if everybody was to go into entrepreneurship with their own business, it would not be beneficial for the economy. For the simple reason, a lot of people want to learn, still need to learn before they go into that. And then there's some people who just who wouldn't want a business. There are people who, if you give them the option of $1 million or $1 million business, they'll choose the $1 million because it's not the business ownership they want. They want the money. They want the reward of the business. But there are some people who would take up the actual running of the business, the $1 million business. So it's something to keep in mind. Entrepreneurship is not for all. All right, so jumping into some exciting web technologies. I did say I'd mention a few of them. So just going back to that slide, let's just discuss a couple of them. I want you to be aware of them because they're going to be very relevant in the next couple years. Some of them are relevant now, but many are going to be even more relevant. One is WebGL2. I know Andor, yeah, Jason. I know Andor could also speak to this. WebGL2 is, of course, the very recently announced API from Chrome, Chromium, that allows your browser to render things way more smoothly by using the GPU natively. What do all those big words mean? It means that if you're planning to go into game development or metaverse development, 3D space development, which is a space I'm very passionate about, then your browser is going to be able to handle a lot more that is thrown at it without overheating or crashing on you. One of the platforms that we use a lot with Youth Can Do IT is Mozilla Hubs. It allows you to create a virtual space and navigate it in VR. And, depending on your phone, it can actually really heat up and crash, and same with your laptop. But technologies like WebGL2 allow rendering a lot faster and a lot smoother. And so that makes it a lot better for performance devices to run with. I'm going to run through the others and then come back to Andor. The next one that you need to be aware of, PWAs and Web Navigator. I'm not sure if you guys had discussed PWAs before in your career talks. I strongly suggest if you're into web, I know Moya has 10 years of experience in web. Make sure you're looking at progressive web apps. They are very important for the future of web and browsers because they expose a lot of the native features that your device only reserved for mobile apps or native apps to the browser. What am I talking about? Here's an idea that I had, and if anybody builds it, let me know. I'd love to consult. But your laptop has Bluetooth built in. And previously, many years ago, you couldn't access that Bluetooth from your laptop. But now your laptop can act as a signal receiver for Bluetooth signals, especially Bluetooth low energy, right? Through the browser, not even through a native application. So why not create a company that, you could here's a new idea. You could do check-ins at the door when people come in, and when they fire up their browser at work, it syncs to their smartwatch, and that's their automatic check-in time, right? Because it senses their Bluetooth low energy. So instead of manually checking in to say, I'm here, as soon as their watch syncs with their laptop, then it's like timestamp, Chris is here, boom. Right, that's possible now because of Web Navigator APIs and PWAs. 3, custom elements and web components. This is an exciting technology because of what it means for JavaScript, my closest friend. Custom elements are designed with the intention of making frameworks less necessary to build reusable components. And so what that looks like is eventually you should be using less React, less Svelte, a little bit more stencil in your applications because of web components. The idea is that instead of going to another library and loading it in your website, you're able to package something. Nice, Shane. You're able to package something that's reusable just by using something like custom components, and you use it just like you would native HTML. It's supposed to be a lot faster, and it's supposed to use native JavaScript to do a lot more of what frameworks used to do. For animation specifications like Lottie, which has .lottie files, and Reeve app, those are two animation libraries for the web that provide really smooth animations that are cross-platform. So if you've ever used Duolingo, if you ever used Twitter or YouTube, all three of those are already using Lottie animations for their animations and you don't know. So every time you click the like button on YouTube, that's a Lottie animation. Airbnb is the company that created Lottie. So this is their platform that they've open sourced. So they, of course, would have been using it. And Duolingo uses it for all their nice, smooth animations as well. And then fifth is Wasm. I know most of you would have heard of Wasm. Wasm brings a big promise with it, which is that many of the applications that are written in languages that usually don't touch the web, like C, which was mentioned earlier, Wasm is supposed to be able to compile down and still run in the browser. It's the first non-JavaScript or ECMAScript language that's supposed to run in the browser since JavaScript came out, right? Which is pretty big. What it means is running applications that usually wouldn't run, like, I don't want to give specific examples in case you've never heard of them, but applications that do sound encoding and decoding, video encoding and decoding will run in your browser instead of having to run on your laptop because the browser couldn't handle it. Those are just 5 technologies to keep in mind: WebGL2, PWAs, and Web Navigator, custom elements, animation, and WASM, which stands for WebAssembly, by the way, WASM. So that's WebAssembly, but there's so much more. There's, wallets. We could go into the whole NFT and the wallet discussion with Web3. I don't know that much about it, so I don't want to touch it. But that's also something that persons are getting excited about. And so that leads us to kind of the last part that I want to discuss, right? Which is with all of these options and all of these potential pathways, these tracks that you can go on, how do you decide where to start and where to go? So I'm a strong believer that each of us has been given God-given talent. Every single person. In fact, I don't know anybody who's talentless. I know people who've told me they're talentless, but I don't think that they actually are. And in fact, it's not a true statement. You might think you are, but a lot of persons just haven't figured out what it is that they are just inherently good at. Some people may have been very good at speaking, but they've been told to be quiet so many times, they don't really look at it as a gift. You might be a problem solver, but I remember personal example from when I was in Barbados. I was in a relationship and my girlfriend at the time used to call me Mr. Fix-It because my mind is always working to solve problems, always. So that was something that just came out in everything that I was doing. And you might not look at that as a gift or an ability, but it really is. And so a verse that really stands out to me, and I'll share it with you guys, is this beautiful verse. You might know the guy that actually said it, but this is from the book of John in the Bible, right? John chapter 17, verse 4. And this guy, pretty famous guy named Jesus, he was speaking at the time and he said, "I have brought you glory on earth by finishing the work you gave me to do." Now, I don't want you to look at that like it's a throwaway sentence, If he could say, "I have brought you glory on earth by finishing the work you gave me to do," it means in speaking to God, he's saying, there was a specific work, I did it well, and I finished it, and it's work that you gave me to do. And that is something that I hope stands out because each of you has been given a work as well. And if you want to succeed and have longevity in an area, figure out what you were created to do. We're talking about careers, not jobs. Most of you can find a job and most of you can find high-paying jobs if you're on this call. That's not really the issue. O'Shane just mentioned that 3 of the biggest companies in the world have reached out to find developers. So it's not that you're invisible. But if you want longevity, please figure out what you've been created to do. That's going to be your best bet in going forward. Looks like I'm actually going to finish at 8. So I want you to keep that in mind. It's a serious thought. Each of us has been created to do something specific on this earth. And I just want to leave you with some recommended resources because I'm also a very strong believer that leaders are readers. And I know most people don't like to read, but if you're going to have an intelligent conversation, you need to do some research outside of your own thoughts. And so leaders are readers, not just YouTube watchers, right? So here are 3 recommended resources for those of you who want to learn more. This is an excellent course that we have our team do. Anybody who starts in a web role on my team has to do the UX and Web Design Master Course by Joe Natoli. Excellent course. Teaches you a lot about how to think through the web development process. Then you have The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman, a great book, and it's a very popular book, along the same lines as another book called Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug. But this book frames, like it will change the way you look at even your making tea in the morning. That's how serious it is. Like before this book, when you make tea, you just put in the coffee and you put in the hot water. After this book, you look at the spoon and you're like, yo, this is an affordance. Okay, this is an affordance and I have to use this like this. So I hold the spoon like this because they designed it with this curve like so. And this book will change the way you think about things that are designed online and physically. And 2 great books. One of them I did audiobook, one I read was Phoenix Project and Unicorn Project. Recommend both of them for every developer. They are, some of you may know them, but they are fictional books based on this company called Parts Unlimited that describes the project management struggles they had, software development struggles, web development struggles, and how they can deal with different types of work that comes in. Because not everything is a fire. Even though the client might say it or your boss might say it, not everything is a fire to be put out immediately. Some things can be scheduled for the future. And this book is a really good book about thinking about the development process in general. And yeah, that's it. My socials are Chris Durrell, if you do want to reach out. I'd love to have a conversation with anybody on the call about web. And we can definitely talk. And yeah, that's it.
Yes. So I guess we're going to be going into the questions segment. But I guess, Chris, we may have to talk to you about maybe another session because it seemed like we had to rush through parts of your presentation. But excellent job, of course. So we have more hands raising. Okay.
Yeah, I think Andor
hands up.
So Andor was going to jump in on the. Yeah, go ahead, Andor.
Hey, thanks. So yeah, first of all, I enjoyed every minute. It's a very, very well done, comprehensive and educational presentation. And I felt you talking from the depths of your heart. You really want to help others to get into this industry, and I really appreciate it. So quickly at the WebGL, why I raised my hand? Because how you saying the career options? For me, that was my strategy when I started my freelancing. Always specialize in the latest technologies that has any kind of commercial trend. And then, because when I migrated to London, I born in Hungary. Hungary was a poor communist country. So in England, they absolutely didn't care whatever university I did in Hungary, what work experience that. So I had to build up from the ground up. And that was my strategy. Always figure out, scout out what the trendy thing what the agency is looking for and specialize on those new trends. And that's how I get into WebGL. And what I wanted to say about WebGL, it's really not only about gaming and 3D. But now all the cutting edge websites, just for normal animation, 3D product view, the trillions of applications. And right now I'm planning to launch a training course here in Jamaica, absolutely free of charge, for people who actually want to learn WebGL and how to use it for cutting edge websites. Because the studio I established in London, we have clients from Ford, Red Bull, Mercedes, Doritos, all the global clients, and we build websites for them using WebGL and its latest technologies. So
Nice.
there's big edge would be cutting edge. And how you mentioned to bring up the Jamaican economy, especially from software development, I truly believe we shouldn't just always catch up where is the Western countries.
100%.
We should be one step ahead of them. So why are we not doing the new revolution, right? So I'm very much, that's why I want to teach cutting edge technologies, whoever interested, you know?
Ander, I'm going to ask you a favor. Please drop your portfolio in the chat, because I've seen his website, guys. The work is excellent.
Thank you.
It's really good.
All right. So yeah, the whole website is done in WebGL. So, and the great thing WebGL, you can very nicely mesh it and combine it with classical HTML elements, because obviously for SEO you still need to use text, images, and all basic things. So yes, and another thing, I joined for your recommendations because I read both books. These are not
Nice.
things. And it's just hilarious. That guy is the best. I was very young at the very beginning of my career when I get that book, and I can just warmly suggest to everybody. And the Phoenix Project too. But I mean, it's a bit fiction, a little story, you know, that I really enjoyed that too. But the course, I will check it out tomorrow. The
course is excellent. And I think the Phoenix Project, I will say, for those of you who want to start to read and you don't like if you don't like reading, you know, statistical books, Phoenix Project is a nice book to get started with because of the way they phrase the story. Like you see yourself with the characters. Even if you're not the main character, you can be with the side character, but you will learn. So that's a nice one to start with.
Okay, and I see we still have Jason, so we're gonna take Jason and then Cleon, even though he has lowered his hand. I think he's maybe tired from holding up his hand. So let's go with Jason and then Cleon.
All right, so I have a lot of questions here, so I think Cleon can go first.
Oh wow. Okay, all right, Cleon, go ahead. Cleon, are you still with us? I hope you didn't pass out from.
Stepped away shortly. What's the question?
Oh, I believe you had a question for Chris Durrell.
No man, I was clapping.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay. I'll go ahead and mention one thing. So I posted the links for the course that was mentioned, and then also I posted another link called roadmap.sh. It's a great website that I tend to recommend a lot of individuals to. It tends to have a real detailed roadmap of things that you probably should know or most likely know based on the different stage of your development career. Whether even if you're a front end, back end, whatsoever, it tends to have a really nice detail. These are things that you should know, soft skills as well as hard skills.
Nice. All right, let me bookmark this as well.
All right, so I guess Jason, go ahead.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, Christopher, the first question would be, are you on Twitter? And if yes, what is your handle?
So I am on Twitter or X. I'm at Chris Durrell. So at Chris.Durrell.
Chris.Durrell?
Yeah.
All right, next question would be, where is this? Yes, let's say I'm a regular youth from the corner, and I have a degree, but more jump into web development. So could web development get me like 1 or 2 markets and maybe a house up at Kingston, up at St. Andrew?
How long are
Well,
we talking?
before you answer, this is
Why?
apparently
That's
a
a question.
recurring question for all of the events. So,
That's a great
yeah,
question.
go ahead.
Well, I'll answer it like I've never heard it before. So, if you're a Yuponicana, can web development get you on MarkX? Well, depending on how long you're willing to wait. So, how long are we talking?
I mean, like, so a quick money will say still, so within 3 years.
Probably not. No, it's unlikely in Jamaica. You'd probably have to take the agency or the entrepreneur route if you want it in 3 years.
All right, but you
Yeah.
think without that degree, I can still become a great web developer?
Yeah, I do. In fact, I was invited to do a panel discussion with the Jam Coders Summer Camp, and somebody had the same question. And I don't think people know the rates at which web developers are paid. And obviously it varies across the industry. We, depending on the level, so we start junior developers out of UE between 100,000 and 135,000 as an entry level position. And that's because we spend 2 to 3 months training. So you are coming in fresh. You have to be smart though, but you're coming fresh. You come in with energy, but you get taught like this course that I shared with you and about 2 months of teaching. Because what we want to do is kind of shape your natural talent. But no, it's not a quick money thing. It's more of a you grow over time thing. Might take longer than 3 years, honestly. But even without a degree, if you have a portfolio, we would consider you.
Well, it's kind of disappointing, but you can work for a couple more years, we can get the markets at least.
Absolutely.
All right, you mentioned that was intelligent pay scale. Are you willing to say the pay scale for the other roles that you have or the other ranges?
Yes, I am willing. Because I know this is usually hidden stuff. But I will say my caveat is that we are more than likely looking at the pay scales now to see what we need to adjust.
That's cool.
Yeah. I can give you some ballparks. I don't have them on me. So we hire for UI, UX developer, not designer, because we use Wix a lot of times for our clients to be quick and we're Wix partners. So that can go from, I can give you ballparks. Please don't quote me on them. So junior is this 100 to 135. After you have 2 years experience or 1 year experience, it's 135 to 180, and then it goes up after that. So the more senior you are. And what we do is we have regular reviews. So when you come, you have a 6-month review, a 1-year review, a 2-year review, sometimes a 1.5-year review. So we keep it on a 6-month, and then after 2 years is 3 years. And if you have performed up to a certain standard, then you can qualify for a raise. And then there are other perks as well. So after 3 months, you get insurance. After 2 years, you get pension contributed to your own pension account. So it's not vested, it's yours. Because we want to encourage people to actually have a pension. Please, guys, if you don't have a pension, start a pension. It's not that hard. And you really don't need that much food right now.
Yeah,
And
I do apologize. Let me just dig into that. So JMB does have like a pension plan that you can just just sign up and have a personal pension on your own that you can literally contribute to yourself, or when you work at somewhere, you pretty much can ask them to just put the pension money towards that. So no matter where you work, if you leave that work, you still continue up that pension, because at times when you leave a particular workplace, they actually cancel the pension plan with them. So having that personal pension set up aside is a great direction for you.
100%.
Okay, so it looks like I'm not gonna put Chris on the spot, so he doesn't have to answer now, but it looks like we may have to get Chris on another session with us, because we still have more questions.
Yeah, man, I would love to take the other questions. And please don't feel afraid, guys. I have no problem saying no to you. I have no problem to say I'm not willing to share. So you're not pressured.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's 5 because he didn't get to finish what he
Yeah.
was going to answer. All right, go ahead, Chris.
Well, that was pretty much it. So 180 is the mid, and then it goes up after that. And then we have tech lead or developer lead, and then we have management. So it will go up after that pay scale.
Okay.
What's next, Jason?
Okay. What did you say tech lead and management was?
It's above 180.
Above 180.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you highlighted certain books that you recommend developers reading. Like, are you willing to, like, maybe write a LinkedIn post or some type of article where you'd say, hey, I recommend any person wants to become a great developer to do these courses, to take these books or take this path?
You want me to do one?
Sure, I'd like you to do one.
Cool. Yeah, then I'll add you.
I think that's it for me. Yeah.
All right, let me make a note of that. And I'm going to drop in the other books that I think are helpful because, for example, I've read 2 books on the metaverse. Well, listened to one and read one, Navigating the Metaverse. And Matthew Ball has an excellent book about PWAs to the metaverse. I would drop that in there, even though it's not web. Developers should know the history. Because when you, like, guys, honestly, if you're not reading, you are behind your competitors, especially those across the world. There are certain things that you will not pick up in a YouTube video. You just have to read. I remember this book the Matthew Ball book about the metaverse. He was mentioning the history of how Apple basically has been sabotaging the development of WebGL, as Andor would know, and how adoption of PWAs would work. Because Apple's mindset is that if you're going to have that Bluetooth access and the NFC access, then you have to build a native app and you have to go to their app store and you have to pay them the 30% payment. You're not allowed to create something that circumvents that. No way, no how. And they put it under the guise of, we want to protect our users, therefore we need to vet every app, therefore it must go through the app store. But there are ways to vet web apps as well. And so over many years, over a decade, over 10 years, they have been blocking that. But now, as of Safari this year, they've started to allow slowly different features to come out, like push notifications in Safari 16.4 and things like that. If you guys don't know the history, boy, honestly, you're not going to be able to contribute as much as you think you can to a discussion. So please read a book. Readers are leaders. And if you want to lead, you must read.
Yeah, I must agree too. I'm reading 2-3 books all the time, and I read that metaverse. But the interesting thing you said that is not web technology. I don't totally agree because I think the whole web developing actually into the metaverse.
Fair enough.
Right?
So you say no, I didn't say it's not tech. I said it's not web dev.
Yeah, you said not web.
Yeah.
Exactly, but that's how I see. I think there's big potential web will develop into a metaverse. Because how now we have web XR,
yes,
we develop in terms of web AR and VR, and the biggest network, Decentraland, that open source metaverse is based on web and WebGL.
Yep, that's true.
I think we are in that moment when certain big companies want to colonize the metaverse for themselves, like Facebook building their own metaverse, Microsoft their own, Apple is their own. But what if just how web managed to be independent and run by all these communities like us? And that could turn into that very independent metaverse that will serve everybody, not run by a single corporation.
So all I'll say is, Alden, I think you know what our next discussion is going to be.
About metaverse?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna take over.
Sorry, I don't know if we have any more time, but I got 2 more questions in the chat. I don't know if you want to. So
all right, let's run with the questions. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, Sharma was asking, does the company have any internship for C# and .NET developers? I've made some projects using those, hoping to get more experience. When you say internship, do you mean because you're in school or because you don't know if you have enough experience to get the job? Oh, you're in school. Okay. We do summer internships, but not for C# and not .NET. Oh, okay, noted. Not for C# and not for .NET specifically, but you'll find that a lot of web is transferable. So C# and .NET, of course, is talking about the backend. But when we come down to the UI, it's HTML, CSS, JavaScript, whatever framework you're using, currently they just compile down to those. And that is pretty transferable. So if you have good backend skills and maybe an eye for UI, and you're interested in a job, we are hiring. Let me just show you really quickly. So we have both junior and senior roles available right now, one of each on our website, intelligent.net. So what I would suggest before you say, boy, I don't have the skill, or I do, just read through the job description. And if you think it matches you, even 80% Sharma, then apply. At the very least, you'll be invited in for an interview with the team and you'll get the feeling for how the interview goes. And then, yeah. So I'll paste this in the chat. And then the other question was for persons with 2 years of experience in another field and a portfolio, would they still be deemed a junior developer? And would the salary of that person be the same as a fresh graduate without working experience and no portfolio? No.
Interesting question.
It's an interesting question. No, that sounds kind of unfair. I would say that it depends on where you apply. If you're talking about intelligent, no, because we're a startup in the sense that we're at 11 persons now. We're paying you based on what you can do to add to the company's value on the bottom line. We're not government who's going to say this is your pay scale based on your degree. That said, it doesn't hurt to have a degree. But no, you would not come out at the same as a fresh developer, a fresh graduate without any working experience. So you wouldn't come in at the same if you can contribute more quickly to the value of the company. That one you can hold me to if you do apply.
I've actually applied already a couple of months back. So just putting that out there.
Really? So I haven't
Right.
seen it.
Well, I can forward it to you.
No, I don't
again,
think you're
but I
lying
would
to
have.
me. I just haven't seen it.
Yeah.
All right, that's good.
It sounds like he's put you on the spot there. Just
No,
say
I like that. You must speak up. You must, anyhow,
Oh.
you're on this call and you were just quietly sitting, hoping that I'd remember your name. That wouldn't make any sense. I'm glad that you spoke up.
I think Tyreek did a great thing, because head of web development right there, he can just give you a nice recommendation. You were at this event, and we talked to you, so just give me the job, right?
That's the plan.
He
That's the
actually
plan.
knows what they're looking for. So he
There you
actually
go.
has an advantage. He knows he needs to make his portfolio.
That's the plan, guys.
Exactly, Alvin. Exactly.
So he has an advantage, but that's essentially why we're here, why the community is here. So I'll be taking over just to wrap up, and I guess we will discuss further what are the possibilities for a follow-up event off air. But thank you very much, Christopher Durrell.
My
All
pleasure.
right.
Thank you for the invitation.
No problem. It was very informative. And of course, for those persons who would want to participate in our future demos, we do demos, we do career days, we do crash courses, whatever it is, whether it is that you want to just share your skills and talents, be a part of our discussions, possibly maybe a part of the metaverse discussion, hopefully coming up soon. Definitely reach out to us. You have our email. And I'm hoping that you guys are, of course, a part of the community. of developers where you would be able to get informed with all of our events. You'd be able to correspond with us, correspond with our speakers, as long as it is that they allow you to reach out to them. We can definitely encourage you to be a part of the community and stay connected with us. All right. And I want to, of course, give a big thank you for all of you guys for coming out and being a part of the event. And definitely want to, of course, do a big thank you for Chris Durrell. I know he's very busy, with a lot of his different projects, personal and otherwise, even doing volunteer work with the youths. Definitely that's a big thing, even for us as well as part of as a community. We do see the value of impacting the next generation. So of course, reach out to us, connect with us, and thank you for coming. Have a great evening, have a great week. Blessings, all good. And of course, if it is that you have not connected with us, you have our email. There are a couple information that is being posted in the chat. Write them down. Get in contact with our with our different team members that are gonna add you to the different groups that you can follow up with any information that we have, anything that we're able to share. Because as you say, if it is that you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if it is that you want to go a far distance, you have to go with someone that's going to be able to help you along the way, that you can encourage along the way. In case you're going off track, they can say, hey, let's go this way. This is the right way. So join the community, get involved, let's make Jamaica, let's make the Caribbean a better place. Have a great evening, guys. Blessings.
Yeah.